Well, I don't think I was the only one hoping that maybe Baku and back-to-back with Canada, maybe Mercedes would be a little bit nearer the front runners, i.e. Ferrari and Red Bull Honda. But preliminary news from Baku on Friday is that it's about pretty much the same. And I think the proof of that was at the back end of FP2, the second session in Baku, which is run very late in the afternoon there. It's beautiful light over the city. And of course, the track was a little bit quicker because of the thinner, cooler air, but it wasn't that cool. Anyway, at the back end of FP2, by the time everyone had run their medium tyres with light fuel and then their soft tyres on light fuel just to see what they could really do for a lap time, and they put fuel into the car to do some long runs. I thought it was interesting that every team, every major team anyway, split their options at this point, because quite clearly the soft tyre has a lot of durability and quite clearly the medium tyre has a lot of pace. So if you look at what the teams did at Ferrari, for example, Charles Leclerc ran soft tyres with heavy fuel, whilst Carlos Sainz did the homework with the medium tyre. Similarly, at Red Bull, it was Max Verstappen on the soft tyre, Sergio Perez on the medium tyre. This is all with fuel in the car. But at Mercedes, they both ran mediums, which I think, that's George and Lewis, of course, not necessarily in that order, which I think is indicative that they still have a big focus here. Just get the two drivers comfortable in the car, try to be as quick as they can. Horrendous bouncing on the Mercedes, but pretty bad bouncing up and down the grid. So we shouldn't take that too far out of context, but it was very clear that Lewis was completely unhappy with the car for most of the day. There was one moment at the beginning of, it was at the end of FP1, when they said, Lewis, be a little bit careful about putting all four wheels over the exit line from the pit lane, sort of braking almost into turn one. And he said, well, I can't see the line. The car's bouncing so much, I can't see what I'm doing. And then there was a disheartening moment, for all Hamilton fans anyway, at the beginning of FP2, by which time they'd run the medium tyre and the field was settling down to think about running the soft. And Lewis said, well, they said to Lewis, you know, the gap between you and Leclerc is, well, they told him the gap, and we'll get onto that in a minute. And he just went, repeated the number, and then it was just silence. So I think that says everything that needs to be said at the moment about Mercedes. Sadly, for Mercedes and Lewis and George fans, it looks as if Mercedes are about where they have been all year. They haven't made any of that quantum leap that potentially they were going to do for these circuits, which are similar in characteristics, as I've been saying on our live streams on Twitch. If you looked at this back-to-back double header between Baku and Canada 6 weeks ago, you would have said, right, there's two circuits with long straights. For sure, Baku has a lot more slower corners in between, but if we're going to put anything together to try and get this car to work with those long straights, it needs to be for those two back-to-backs. And no doubt Mercedes are trying, they're working hard like everybody else, but at the moment it doesn't look as if they've closed the gap appreciably, if indeed they've closed it at all, because right now Alpine look to be significantly quicker than Mercedes. So right now, Friday night of Baku going into Saturday. So let's have a look in detail at what happened today. This was fuel runs, not very much in terms of lappery from Charles on fuel tanks in FP1 this morning. Noticeable, I thought, that the Red Bulls were absolutely ready to go, first out virtually onto the track. And you can see there, back end of FP1, how much running Max got in with fuel in the car compared with Charles Leclerc. And I think that was a bit of a jolt, and Ferrari first onto the track in FP2 and did a really good job with fuel runs in FP2. But just looking at FP1 there, you can see Max, and they're on the medium tyre, Charles was on the hard, so no real comparison. I got Lando in there just as a sort of placemaker, if you like. But very good run from Max, 49.3, 48.8, 48.8, 49.4, 49.3. And you can see the top speeds there, 309, 310, 311, really impressive in the morning. The Red Bull much quicker than anything else in a straight line in FP1. Come FP2, it was pretty clear that Ferrari took wing out of the car and Red Bull put wing into the car, because the top speeds were very similar in FP2. So at the beginning, just going onto the track, the Red Bull obviously really quick in a straight line. Charles, you can see, not even getting into the 300 barrier in terms of top speed. And now let's have a look at another interesting, I think, set of stats, which is FP1 when they're running soft tyres. Admittedly, the track hadn't picked up that much grip at that point, but it's interesting to see how the Red Bull, and particularly the Ferrari and the Mercedes, compared over the sectors. Bear in mind, sector 3 is all about top speed, really. That's going to be accentuated, which is why I've got the top speed they did on that lap, that quickest lap on the soft tyre runs in FP1. That is the top speed they were doing. And you can see there that Max 310, Sergio 311, and the two Ferraris, Charles 307. That was a really good lap. Whether he's in a bit of a tow at that point, I don't know, because Carlos never got over 301 in terms of top speeds. But I thought the interesting thing there was how quick the Ferraris are in Sector 2 of Baku. Admittedly, again, they're probably running too much wing in FP1, but really quick and impressive to watch through that tight section, particularly Charles Leclerc. Just incredible in terms of the margin he was not leaving, bearing in mind it was FP1. Bearing in mind he's had an incident before in Baku a couple of years ago when he locked up, didn't take the escape road and hit the barrier, but he was right on it doing these laps, 45.6. Sergio Perez, really good to watch as well. There was a moment, got to say, there was a moment this morning when Sergio came out of, I don't know, it was about turn 16, I think, and the back end actually had a bit of a jig to it. And he actually had to put some opposite lock on. Couldn't believe it. Next corner, he got it absolutely right, of course. I'm only being facetious, but yeah, it's quite unusual to see Sergio with oversteer. But nonetheless, really good job he did. He looked like the Monaco winner, coming out and really enjoying himself around Baku, whereas Max was scratching around a bit and wasn't very happy with the feel of the car, particularly on slow corners, and said at the end, he was saying, I'm coming out of the throttle, going down the gears, and the car's understeering at this point, it's pushing at this point, which would, I don't know, who am I to say this, but would suggest that maybe that trick front suspension geometry of Adrian Newey has actually got too much anti-dive built into it, and they're not getting the grip they need at the front when they come out of the throttle. Interesting, because obviously the car is pretty good overall, and it was pretty good in FP2, as we will see. So on soft runs, Carlos Sainz 46.0 compared with Charles 45.6, so yeah, it's about normal. Lewis 46.6. At this point, he would have felt reasonably happy because he was a bit quicker than George Russell, and he'd be thinking, Pierre Gasly's usually quite quick in the Alfa Tauri, 46.8, me 46.6. So that's what he did, but it kind of fell away in FP2, I've got to say. And we kept seeing shots of the Mercedes, actually the onboard shots of the Mercedes, and just the audio of what it sounds like when it's bouncing at 299 kilometers an hour. It's pretty frightening, actually. That's probably the right word. It's Formula One cars on the straight in Baku. They're going really quickly, but they don't look very elegant. There's sparks everywhere. They're jiggling around. You can tell they're bouncing. They look clumsy. I know they aren't, and I know they're unbelievably quick, but particularly with the slow-mo, the cars look quite clumsy and, well, they look big and heavy as well, which is, of course, what they are. And you just think, with the tyre problems we had last year, I'm sure Pirelli have done their homework with the sidewall, which is one of the reasons we have the big sidewall on these 18-inch wheels. And I'm sure that everybody's got last year in mind. But you just think, Baku, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of energy going through the cars, particularly over a full race distance. And when you see in slow-mo how much movement there is and how much energy is going through the car, particularly under braking, when the thing's super stiff and there's sparks everywhere, I mean, they're just bottoming out everywhere. They must be they are for sure, very uncomfortable to drive. And that's a sad thing in a way, because, it wasn't that long ago when you could say, or when drivers could say, it's a beautiful car to drive. It's just a pleasurable, beautiful car to drive. And I don't think many drivers, even Charles when he's on the pole, or Max when he's winning races, or vice versa, I don't think either of them would say these are beautiful cars to drive. They would say they're tough, hard cars to drive, and we need a lot of massage and a lot of physio just to keep our backs in one piece. Well, not in one piece, but to be relatively okay to absorb the energy. So let's have a look now at FP2. As I say, it was much later in the day, and much later than we're going to see the race start, or indeed qualifying. So that has to be borne in mind. Also, of course, there is a guess factor with how much fuel they're running. But I've headed this light fuel medium tyres, because at the beginning of FP2, it's become a bit of a norm now. Everybody runs medium tyres, and then they go to soft tyres, do their runs, and then they end FP2 doing their fuel runs. In general, assuming you're not Ferrari in Miami. But so it's difficult to know exactly, of course, how much fuel they're running. But this was the order at the end of the sort of first 20 minutes when they'd run what appeared to be light fuel. Let's call it light fuel. All of them on medium tyres, interestingly enough, new sets of medium tyres. But some of them did their time after 2 or 3 laps. And Max did not get a very good run in traffic, particularly on the soft tyre that's coming in a second. Didn't get a great lap, and he had to have 2 or 3 runs to get to that 43.8. And by the time he did it, his tyres weren't at their best. So there you can see what I was saying earlier. You can see now the top speed of the Red Bulls has dropped right away to 310. Everybody else has picked up with the thinner air, possibly in the slightly cool of the afternoon. Charles Leclerc 43.8, great looking lap, right on the edge. Max 43.8. Same lap time, looked to have more in hand and looked to be a more composed lap in terms of not asking quite as much of the car. Sergio Perez 43.9, still looking really quick. There was a moment when they were telling him the difference between him and Charles, which seemed a bit over the top, I thought, for FP2 on a Friday to be saying, oh, you're 1/10 here, 300ths down there. Come on, the guy's just won Monaco and he's getting into a rhythm, doing a really good job. 312 top speed, still really good, obviously, but Ferrari not slow. 314, as I say. Carlos Sainz 312, 44.2. Just being Carlos Sainz, really, just driving around kind of a little bit slower than Charles Leclerc, but doing a good job today. Good homeworky job. Had a couple of escape roads. Charles had a few escape roads. We saw Max doing some nice turns when he went down the escape road. We saw Pierre Gasly do a really nice one. We saw Lando Norris doing, I wouldn't call it a 3-point turn, it's like a 5-point turn in the McLaren when he went down the escape road. But worst of all, just talking about all these things, actually, incredibly, was Alex Albon, who you would have thought it was Nicholas Latifi, but it was Alex Albon. Very, very quick kink. And he hit the apex. I mean, they're all running very close to the apex. And he actually hit the apex, just flat out, going through a kink, hit the apex and bashed the car. I think he bent the suspension because he came through the garage, got out of the car. What an error that was. I mean, it's one thing to sort of run wide, catch, as Lance Stroll kept doing, and sort of hit the barrier or on the outside left rear, clang it down. Which, that's what you expect on a street circuit, Baku. These things happen. But to hit an apex at high speed, I mean, that was bizarre, completely bizarre. Anyway, getting back to it, Fernando Alonso has been really quick all day in the Alpine. Look at that top speed, 318, quickest this afternoon in FP2 Alpine, which is a function of how much Red Bull have absorbed in terms of their top speed. They've absorbed and tried to parlay that into downforce, increased grip. But Renault, Alpine, either unable to do that because they don't have such an efficient and adjustable aero package, or because, it's not a bad lap anyway, 318. And if you're doing that lap time of 44.9 and you're really quick on the straight, that actually puts you in very good shape in the race, because we all know, of course, that with 2 DRS zones, particularly the long one past the pits, it's not a bad thing. Even if you make a bad start, you should be able to pick up a few places fairly quickly, assuming it all pans out in this sort of way. Yuki Tsunoda's looked really good. Hasn't really done anything wrong all day. Looked really good. Right up there with Pierre Gasly. Both AlphaTauris looking strong. And obviously, focus for them will be on qualifying after the dramas of Monaco when they didn't get. I mean, Q1 was their limit, but they were really quick. And that was because Yuki went off. And then with Pierre, he was always out at the wrong time. He caught the weight, the FIA weighing, and by the time he went out with his tire, he should never have come in, of course, and should have stayed out there. And that was the issue. So they'll probably be thinking that it's not quite the same as Monaco, but I think it won't be a surprise to see both AlphaTauris just staying out there tomorrow, regardless of how the tyres are going away. Valtteri Bottas had a fairly quiet day in the nicely liveried one-off livery. I think it's to celebrate the new Alfa electric car. It's a bit of an oxymoron there, isn't there? But anyway, we won't go any further. But it looks great. I mean, it's the tricolor of Italy. And Valtteri, fairly quiet in the morning and fairly quiet in the afternoon, really. But there he is doing a 45.8. Sebastian Vettel, yeah, about the same. But there's an Aston Martin Mercedes quicker than the factory Mercedes. What must that feel like? Not very good. George in this run quicker than Lewis, and that would have been annoying for Lewis. This is when Lewis was just completely blown away by how far off the pace they were, I think. And I think, when he's done what he feels is a good Lewis Hamilton lap, and he's done a 46, and you see Charles Leclerc doing a 43.8, I think it will have much more of a deflating effect on Lewis than it would on George, who's kind of, been there, done that. That's where I was at Williams. But for Lewis, I think he was completely shattered by that. Psychologically, no, mentally, not physically, honestly. Esteban Ocon, doing a good job in the other Alpine, quite quick. And Guanyu Zhou, actually, pretty good. Mick Schumacher stopped right on about the first lap of FP1 and then was sort of playing catch up after that. Then we went to the light fuel runs on soft tyres. That's the middle of FP2, and not a lot of change to the overall pattern. I think the only thing to remember there is that Max Verstappen didn't really get in a great lap, so don't read too much into that. And I guess this was the moment also when George put in the lap again, and there he is 0.3 quicker than Lewis. Then we went to I think always the most significant and interesting part of the day, which is the long runs in FP2. And I've got a few of the runners in there just to get a feel, so you can have a feel for where everybody is. The numbers in brackets obviously are, parentheses rather, the top speeds they were doing on that lap. And there you can see the good homework that Ferrari are doing here. They've got Charles and Carlos split soft to medium. Bit ironic that, isn't it? Because the more I delve into why Charles didn't put on slicks in Monaco and why they put intermediates on, and then he had to come in sort of 2 laps later to put the slicks on, the more I delve into that, the more I'm hearing that it was because Ferrari felt that because Carlos had made the first call to go to slicks, they thought, we better split our options and put Charles onto intermediates. I mean, I hope it's not true, but I've heard that is what thinking was. And if that is the case, I mean, wow, to lose a Monaco Grand Prix because of that. But here they are, splitting the options again. Charles on the soft tyre. So he's doing fastest lap 47.2, and Carlos on the medium is doing a 47.6, which is about what you'd expect, the difference between the two. But it's significant, I think, that Charles' lap times are not really dropping off. And if you look at the other soft runners, Max didn't get out. I mean, because he spent so much time, I should go back actually to just say it on the soft run. Max actually on his quick run, he got a yellow sector 2, caused by Sergio Perez, his teammate, going straight on into escape road. And then he sort of faffed around for a couple of laps trying to get temperature back in, and then the tyres had lost their edge, and then he got another set. And by the time he did all that, there was only time to do 3 long runs at the end of the day. But you can see there 47.5 last lap on the soft tyres, so he's getting quicker, not slower. Top speed 3.16 compared with Charles 3.15, so they're right close to one another. Amazing, isn't it, how close and competitive it is. And Sergio on the medium tyre, very good job, 47.5 on the medium, 3.11 top speed, 47.7 on his last lap. So it's very close between the soft and the medium in terms of longevity. And if you get, obviously, the soft right at the beginning is going to be quick, but the medium is a quick tyre. It looks like a really quick tyre. Fernando, a little bit slower than his soft tyre run would have indicated, but look at the number of laps he's doing: 49.6, 49.3, 49.3, 3.14, 3.17, 3.20. I mean, he'll be thinking, okay, I may be a bit off the pace, but I've got, with fuel load, but look at that top speed. That's really quick. Now let's look at the Mercedes by comparison. I mean, they're struggling to get, they're doing 48s, 49s, the odd 50, and they're struggling to get over 300 kilometers an hour in a straight line. Bear in mind, Charles doing 3.15, Carlos 3.09, Max 3.16, Sergio 3.13, 3.10, and there's Lewis. His quickest lap with fuel is fast as 3.05, maybe with a tow. There's a 2.99 there. It's a bit worrying. It's very worrying, and that's indicative, obviously, of Mercedes just trying to find this compromise between excessive bouncing and trying to get a lap time out of it in terms of grip. So as I say, they haven't really made a lot of progress there, and it's quite a difficult weekend ahead by the look of it. I mean, anything could happen, of course, we've seen that. Although I think the odds of having rain this weekend in Baku are very small compared, of course, with the odds we had at Monaco. So that was it, Friday. Not a lot of change. An interesting day, nonetheless. Interesting to see how Red Bull changed the philosophy of their car between the two sessions, and also how impressive Ferrari look as the weekend is now beginning to gather pace. We'll see tomorrow, of course, for qualifying, and I'll be back then with a video after qualifying, and of course one on race day. And I'm thinking also, for those that kindly have watched our first ventures on Twitch, doing a live stream where we get questions from you and talk through lots of Formula One issues. Thinking of doing a live stream on Sunday morning, but I'll confirm that. Bit of a test live stream, that one, but it could be an interesting time to do it post-qualifying, going into the race, to do maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, and you can throw some questions at me. So watch Twitter, I guess, and I'll let you know if that's going to happen or not, and if so, when. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you again tomorrow.